Good morning, LinkedIn family. It's time for another Coffee with Bob. And once again, I am very pleased to be introducing you all to a new connection. Garret Mintz is probably, and I hope I said your last name right there, Garret. I always mix them up. I always talk about one connection that can change a life. I truly believe that, and that's why I do Coffee with Bob. And I think Garret could be one of those connections for you. Garret is doing a lot of work when it comes to communications and mentorship and mental wellness. If you're not connected to them, if you're not following them, if you're not engaging with them, you're doing yourself a disservice. So connect, follow, and engage with Garret. Garret, thank you so much for joining us on Coffee with Bob today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Bob.
Why don't you give the audience a little clue as to what you're working on right now? You and I had a conversation before the show, and I'm just in awe of what you're working on.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. Essentially, what I do is I help people and teams communicate better through industrial organizational psychology paired with technology. And what I want to talk about today is mental health awareness for executives. I know that sounds like a crazy topic because typically if you're an executive listening to this, you might think to yourself like, okay, I've got to be this rock. I don't have anything wrong with me. There's no mental health issues here. I got to be this person that's the unwavering leader of this company, which means that I can't show any vulnerability whatsoever. And I've got some data that shows contrary, that when we can open up, when we can find those people that we can share with, and they can be in our company, they could be outside of our company, because I recognize there are some conversations that perhaps with people on our own individual team, it just may not make the most sense to have. I also recognize that conversations with our spouse or our beer buddies, it may not make the most sense to have because they can't fully engage or relate to it. So I'm here to talk about just different ways that we can go about one, having a place to release and just get the things on our brains off of our brains and into the ether so we can have a conversation about how we can improve our performance and really have objectivity and get challenged in our lives and as leaders. And two, really just starting the dialogue of why this is so important. So that's really what I want to talk about today.
Okay, awesome. That's awesome. And you said you had something to share with us maybe on that topic?
Well, yeah. So from a data perspective, part of what I do is I facilitate executive horizontal mentor relationships between leaders. Essentially, by horizontal mentorship, I mean two leaders open to learning from each other. So there's not a mentor, there's not a mentee, there's no hierarchy. It's two leaders on the same level, but at different companies and different industries, open to sharing with each other. Because what we find is one, that leaders across industries typically are facing very similar issues, especially as it pertains to their people. But two, their ability to challenge each other when they're outside of each other's company because they've been there and seen it before increases substantially when they feel like they've got no connection to this person other than this mentor relationship.
Yeah, and that's awesome.
From a data perspective, we found that the average executive increased their engagement at work by 5% in a 6-month period.
Wow, interesting. And I belong to several different CIO groups for that very specific reason, because it helps me get exposed to other lines of thoughts, other areas, and allows me an opportunity to get out there and say, hey, I'm struggling here. How can you help? So that's awesome.
That's exactly it. And I think what's so critical is we measure it, because we can't not know what's improving if we are not measuring something. And so oftentimes we'll see a lot of groups, or we'll see a lot of sometimes coaching where it's not as necessarily measured, but it feels good and it seems like we're making progress. But sometimes on a more smaller level, whether that be monthly or quarterly or biannually, it's difficult to actually see if there are tangible metrics showing that I'm improving my performance over time. And that's kind of the other area that I focused on is that. And part of that is engagement levels. And I think that engagement is so interesting to measure for leaders and executives, because I think as executives, we think, oh, well, I'm the owner of this business, or I'm a senior vice president, or I'm a general manager of this business unit, or I'm a leader within my company. I should be optimally engaged. Like if I perform well economically, there's a correlation.
Right.
But what we find is that it's not all about the economics. It's not all about the money. What we learned was that when you can have that space, that person to share, to open up to, and then actually measure how you've changed over time, you're much more likely to get a more realistic viewpoint of your own performance, about yourself, but also you're much more likely to become more introspective and self-aware about the actions you're going to take.
Interesting. So When someone engages with you to get involved in this, what happens?
Yeah, so typically what happens is we have an assessment that gives us an idea of what drives you at work. Essentially, we've been facilitating thousands of mentor matches for over 8 years now. We started in higher ed and eventually worked to corporate. And what we learned was that it's not about what you do, but it's about why you do it. So essentially what we learned is that some people view their work as a job, some people view their work as a career, some people view their work as a calling. And it's a spectrum. So the triangle I'm showing you is the work orientations triangle. Essentially, what we learn is that when two people's work orientations are aligned, the likelihood that relationship lasts for 6 months and is considered productive and quality to both participants is 4 times greater than if you're just pairing on the what. If you're just saying, oh, you're in finance, you're also in finance, let's put you together. If it's just based on that, not a high likelihood of success. But it says, hey, you're both motivated by high growth, or you're both motivated by impact, or you're both motivated by work-life balance, or somewhere in between on this triangle. What we know is that when your dot on this triangle is close to somebody else, you are much more likely to hit it off regardless of their industry.
Wow, interesting. Very interesting. And so if you look in the comments below, there'll be all kinds of links to get in touch with Garret here to talk about some of this stuff, and we'll get those posted as well too.
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. If you'd ever be curious learning your work orientation, there's a link we can provide it. It's a cool way to kind of learn about yourself, but ultimately, that's how people engage with us. And then what we do is we run 360-degree assessments. We gather data at the end of a 6-month mentorship cycle. We create agendas for individual meetings as well as group meetings. And we can then truly measure how you've changed and how your investment of time in this program has benefited you in a 6-month period. So you can actually tangibly put, dollar signs on how beneficial this time was. And so if you liked it, great. And if it didn't give you the tangible results, then you can see that data as well.
Wow, interesting. Very interesting. So in your experience so far, how long are people involved in these types of programs?
So typically it can range, it can vary. So some people will be in a 6-month mentor program, and then what they'll do is they'll go to our light version where maybe they won't have a mentor one-on-one, but they'll be in the group meetings and they'll have our lunch and learns where we bring in a guest speaker to talk about a certain topic. And then they'll jump back in. I think it just depends on their situation. Some people will stay with us and they'll be with us for years and keep getting new mentors to keep growing their objectivity and perspective, because they know that the more mentors they have, the more people they can build these types of bonds with, the stronger they become as a mentor in terms of their own mentorship skill set within their own company. But 2, the greater perspectives they're going to receive as a leader and as a professional.
Wow, that's incredible. Garret is one of those people that will definitely change your life and your growth as an executive, not even as an executive, right? I mean, Garret, this just doesn't apply to executives, right? It's all across the board, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I single out executives because I think executives are a very interesting topic to talk about, because right now we're working with a little over 70 executives in industries, in pretty much every industry across the country. We've even got some in Canada and France. But what we find is that there are so many similar issues across the board. And it's like, once we can crack that nut, that armor of, I need to have the answers for everything, and say, you know what, I don't know the answers to this, and I'm in a safe place that I can actually say, I don't know what the answer is, or I don't really know what my next step is, the sooner we can get this actual serious progress.
Yeah. Awesome. Incredible. So Garret Mintz is one of those that you need to connect, follow, and engage with. It's got some useful information that we can all partake of. And I think the service is an incredible service. In fact, what I'd like to do, I'm going to openly invite you now, Garret, to a Coffee with Bob live, so we can really discuss this over a 30-minute period and maybe even get some questions and answers from the audience. What do you think?
That sounds fantastic.
Awesome. Garret, thank you so much for being on Coffee with Bob. I truly appreciate it. As always, 10 minutes is never enough time, but I thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
Thank you very much.